The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
You took a daughter and a son, a brother and a sister, cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, friends, and obviously two amazing parents, two just innocent children who will never know them again. So you just took so much more.
A double homicide in an ex-husband now facing charges. Questions still lingering in the investigation in Columbus, Ohio. This morning, we are zeroing in on the motive. Plus, we've got the au pair affair murder trial beginning in just a couple of hours. Will the jury buy the au pair's story? Well, we have an expert on the show this morning to weigh in as to whether she can be trusted. And a family is murdered, parents shot to death, children stabbed over and over again, allegedly by their own uncle. So we'll talk about this case and what the jury may be thinking on day number 2. Plus, testimony resumes in the Mansion's murder trial this hour. So as soon as it starts, we're going to take you there live. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? That's what I like to call this show. It's morning time. We get all warmed up and ready to go together for the big day ahead on Court TV Live, and it is going to be a big one. We got a big show too for you. As usual, grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And Paul Canero sure seemed desperate to me. New Jersey prosecutors say that his money problems got so bad that he resorted to committing 4 murders to try to solve them. What's more, prosecutors say that he murdered his own brother, his sister-in-law, and his little niece and nephew. And then prosecutors say he tried to make it look like an arson attack on his mansion and his brother's mansion, to make himself look like a victim. What kind of sick, evil savage does that? Kill your own family members to cover up your own financial mess? Then lie to the world all about it and make it seem like your family has been attacked? Wait a minute. This guy sounds like Alec Murdaugh. Yeah. Rich guy to the whole world, living beyond his means, though, puts himself in a financial mess to try to avoid the consequences, murders his wife and his son, then pretends his family was victimized. Wow. If the facts alleged against defendant Paul Canero are true, sounds like we've got some birds of a feather. 2 desperate birds. Desperate defendants do desperate things, my friends. And as the evidence comes in, we'll see if Paul Canero is as savage and as evil as Alec Murdaugh. And let's remember that there's always the possibility that he may be a lot worse. That's my opening statement on this Tuesday morning. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
He stabbed his nephew Jesse multiple times in his upper body and threw his arm into his chest. And he stabbed his niece, Sophia, 17 times over her entire 45-pound body.
The case I was just talking about, so cruel, so brutal. The trial of Paul Canero resumes at 8:30 a.m. this morning in New Jersey. We're going to be taking you there live once it gets underway. In Virginia, we've got the murder trial of Brendan Banfield beginning this morning. You may know this one is the au pair affair murder trial, opening starting up 10 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk more about this trial coming up in just a little while. And in Washington, we've got the cheating fire chief murder trial resuming for defendant Kevin West. That starts back up at noon Eastern. Right now, to your top story, questions still lingering in the murders of Dr. Spencer Tepe and his wife, Monique. Her ex-husband, Dr. Michael McKee, appeared in court for the first time where he waived extradition.
At this time, Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. McKee, I will assert his right to counsel. I will assert his right to remain silent. And Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant and to agree to his immediate transportation to Ohio.
Investigators zeroed in on McKee after tracking a vehicle that was parked in the neighborhood at the time of the homicides, and they tracked it all the way back to Rockford, Illinois. Guess who lives there? Him. And guess what else? He's a vascular surgeon, once married to Monique in 2015. Records show they got a divorce 2 years later. What's the motive here? You know, we talk a lot, my friends, about how prosecutors don't have to prove it. It's not a requisite element in any criminal case, but it sure helps if you have one and you do what you can to identify one if you're detectives or a prosecutor on a case. So let's talk about this. Let's bring in our expert analyst this morning. I have with me retired detective and sergeant with the NYPD. He's also the co-host of the Gold Shield Show. Dan Murphy is with us. And licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, Dr. Z, as her fans and followers call her, is with us as well. Good to see you both. This case, it's so heartbreaking, and I'm sure you both are getting the questions that we're getting about why. Why would this happen? I'm sure you both have thought a lot about this. Dr. Jamie, ladies first, please. Would you tell me your thoughts when you think about the why? What questions come up in your mind?
Yeah, so I highly doubt that this is an isolated event. I would be absolutely shocked if this was just a sudden, impulsive type behavior. We often do not see domestic violence as an isolated event. We often see it as part of a very long-standing pattern that starts with emotional abuse, psychological abuse, leads to physical abuse, often stalking behaviors. And, you know, in these types of, if this is what we're dealing with, in these types of domestic violence situations, the abuse doesn't end when the relationship ends. In fact, with post-separation abuse, it oftentimes gets worse. So again, I would be very shocked if this was an isolated event. I'm also not shocked that there is no apparent criminal history, because oftentimes this type of coercive controlling behavior is not reported, let alone not really understood.
Sure. You know, and let's say it again for everybody in the back. Post-separation abuse is what Dr. Z is talking about. So even if someone's in an abusive relationship, that abuse can continue and continue and can be very lethal. Dr. Jamie, appreciate that insight. This is where I want to bring you in, Sergeant Murphy. So are you, as a detective on the case, trying to look into whether that marriage was a violent one or even just an emotionally abusive one to try to find your motive in the case?
Absolutely. You're going to want to learn as much as you can about your victim. In any homicide case, you need to know your victim, their life, their background, their history. In this case, we have an ex-husband from 10 years ago who appears to be the murderer. He's been charged. In this situation, I want to know what communication they have had since the marriage, what the marriage was like. Were there police reports filed at any point during that time, protective orders, or is anything like that in effect right now? Was it ever in effect? What communications, if any, has he had with her, and what were the nature of those? Has he been threatening? Has he been stalking and harassing? How often has he been 300 miles away from his home to where she lives? Because in the middle of the night to come do this at once, he probably had been there before. These are the behaviors I'd want to know. I'd be looking at his communications. I'd be looking at his cell phone to see what cell sites he was pinging off of in the days, weeks, months, and even for the last couple of years, however long as 18 months I can go back on those records to find out his activities. Talk to his friends, talk to her friends. What would she be saying? Has she been saying that he's been bothering me, he's harassing me, he wants this, he's calling me this? These are the sort of things that are going to paint a picture of the relationship as it exists today, 8 years after a divorce.
Sergeant Murphy, such helpful insight. You know, in dovetailing off of your point about how you're going to go to those friends and people who knew the couple so well and loved them when they were married, you know, and may have continued to love, you know, one of them as life continues. I've been looking for information out there, waiting for those people to speak out, to say, I kept kind of looking for what Dr. Z was just talking about, you know, was there something emotionally abusive, physically abusive going on, something that made her uncomfortable? She was only living with him for 8 months. Take a look at this. We pulled the records. They get married in August of 2015. He and she divorce in 2017. It's an amicable divorce. Everything is very standard. Incompatibility was the reason cited in the court documents. They only lived together for 8 months. So come March of 2016, they're separated. Dr. Z, I'm not seeing anybody speaking out and saying, I saw the red flags, he was awful, anything like that. Could there be a reason for that?
Yeah, oftentimes, again, like I said before, this form of abuse is often very silent. If there is this, again, form of domestic violence, particularly psychological abuse, it's so difficult for people who are in those situations to even identify and explain it to themselves, let alone be able to explain it to outside people. You know, we heard from one of the neighbors that they thought he was a lovely person. They can't imagine him doing this if he did do it. And so that's very common. It's very difficult for, again, to communicate this form of abuse, but it's also very common that people don't talk about it, not just because they can't find the words for it, but they're scared. There's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of shame, and there's so much fear. So, you know, it could be they're just not speaking about it yet, but it also could be they were unaware. I really would not be surprised if that was the case.
Right, right. You know, and that may be, you know, and maybe it was abusive, maybe not. Maybe she quietly got out to not set him off. Maybe she didn't talk about it, you know, to the points you just made, to not exacerbate the situation any worse. And maybe these people really don't know and didn't see any red flags. Maybe he was a ticking time bomb. Who knows? I want to go to, you know, some of the other things. If we don't get to the motive, Sergeant Murphy, I'm sure in your, you know, long, illustrious career, you've had cases where as much as you try and do everything you can, sometimes there just isn't a motive that's apparent, and that's okay. Here, your best educated guess on this one, on the facts that we know so far, on what you think might have driven this.
If I had to guess, I would say that there's a good chance that this relationship was one that he never fully let go of. And things in his life are probably not going the way he wants them to. He sees her living her dream, great husband, beautiful children, nice life. He is jealous. He doesn't want her to have that happiness without him. That's what I would say, that probably in an interview room with him, if he were to talk, he would be showing a lot of bitterness towards her for going on and achieving a happiness in life that he hasn't. That's, again, just a guess.
Right. No, it's an excellent educated guess. In taking it a step further, you know, you talked about letting go. We all know when we see domestic violence relationships, power and control are the two dynamics. Dr. Z, does that make sense to you psychologically that someone could still be exerting control even all these years after separation?
Absolutely, because a lot of this control comes from instilling a tremendous amount of fear. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I agree. I think that this was something where he had a tremendous loss of control, not over just the relationship, but also access to her emotions. I don't think it's coincidence that this happened right around the 5-year anniversary mark. I think that that was, again, I'll say not coincidence. You know, he likely felt that loss of control. He felt irrelevant. He felt no longer able to dictate her thoughts, her emotions, and her behaviors. And that loss of power and dominance and control over another person in situations with post-separation abuse can really cause, you know, violent behavior to escalate. We see this, unfortunately, all the time.
Sure can. Boy, you two have given us such excellent insight. We'll leave it here for now, but friends at home, you know we're going to be continuing to follow this case as he's waived extradition, going back to Ohio to face those charges. Sergeant Dan Murphy with the Gold Shield Show, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, thank you both so much for your time and expertise. We'll see you soon. Coming up next, here on Opening Statements, here's what we've got.
It's cranking her. I heard, I don't know what was that. And Brendan said, police dropped the knife, because he had a knife. And then he said, drop the gun to Brendan. They were yelling. I couldn't understand. It was super fast.
Can the jury trust the au pair? She may become a star witness in this trial that kicks off today. What can we learn from that video you just saw there? We got a body language expert joining us live, plus a family of 4 murdered, 2 children repeatedly stabbed to death, allegedly by their own uncle. We'll talk about this and whether this was overkill.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Welcome back. Opening statements are set to begin in just under 2 hours from now in the au pair affair murder trial. This is a highly anticipated case. The allegations are this. Prosecutors allege that Christine Banfield was murdered as part of an elaborate plot set up by her husband, Brendan Banfield, and his au pair. They say the motivation was that Brendan wanted to run off with the family's au pair as they were having an affair in the household where the au pair was living and taking care of the couple's child. And as part of the plot to do this, the police allege that these two set up a fake fetish website profile to lure a man to the home who believed he was meeting up with Christine to have consensual sex and some violent sex play. Well, when police arrived, they found Christine stabbed and the man, his name is Joseph Ryan, shot to death. The Banfield's 4-year-old daughter was also home at the time of the incident. The au pair has pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and we expect to see her testify against her lover. So, let's talk about what we can expect from her and how the jury may view her. We got to see her on the body camera footage. She seemed to be in distress, really putting on a performance when it all came out in the wash that she was behind it. We know that now from her legal plea. Help us break it all down. I'm going to bring in jury consultant and human behavior expert, Susan Constantine. Susan, good morning to you. So let's assess Miss Juliana Magalhaes is her name, the au pair. On police body camera footage, let's take a look at the initial interaction with the officers. Here we go.
You don't have to get it all out right now.
I never saw her before.
You didn't see the girl before either? No, so the guy and the girl you don't know?
She's my boss.
Okay.
His father is mom. But I never seen it before. It's a lot of blood.
Susan, what do you see here?
Well, there's a lot of things because I'm listening to what she's saying and then her behavior. So you had to kind of cluster these things together. So you see her kind of shaking her hands like this. But this, what happens is it kind of shakes and then it goes off. It shakes and it goes off. So when somebody is in distress, it is not uncommon for someone to shake, right? Because it's traumatic. So it could be that even after the act had happened, she saw it, and it became traumatic because she actually saw it, the whole thing now unfold, and there's blood everywhere. However, her story falls apart pretty quickly because she doesn't tell the story in past tense. She says that she starts it off in present tense, right? So when what she's doing is she's framing. She's also in performance, and her expressions are not matching what action units that we see in authentic sadness. It just isn't there. So when you know what to look for and it's not there, that's equally as important. So what the jury might be thinking is, wow, this girl seems to be really upset at first. Then the more they start to watch it, they're going to go, something doesn't seem right here. So I think that there's going to be a competing feeling and thought with the jury.
Oh, that's interesting, Susan. Okay, we have another clip for you. This is the clip where she starts to give more details about what she says she saw before telling the police how everything just escalated.
It's cranking her. I heard, I don't know what was that. And Brendan said, police dropped the knife, because he had a knife. And then he said, drop the gun to Brendan. They were yelling. I couldn't understand. It was super fast.
Okay, so for anybody new to this case, we know the knife was brought in by Joseph Ryan as part of this sex fantasy. He thought everyone was comfortable with him having the knife, so that is the knife being referenced. And she's saying that Brendan is telling him to drop it. Okay, Susan, what do you see here, please?
Okay, so again, the story is just falling apart for me. So remember when I talked about when she said that, right, he was spanking her, okay? Well, when he's talking, he is spanking her. She's talking about it as if it's occurring right then, not when it had happened. So she jumps from, of course, the spanking right to the knife. There's a lot of missing information. She's skipping and omitting all in between. Then there's the word said, right? She used the word said, like about the knife, said put the knife down. Said is a downplayed word. When somebody has a weapon, you tell them, I told you to put that knife down. So the thing is that she's messed up in many areas for me. Between her demeanor not matching up, it's not congruent, it's incongruent with real sadness. Her on and off duration of her shaking and trauma symptoms are on and off. The word and language is off. It's minimized. It's framing. And then you look at that she's actually framed the scene. So why is she doing all of that? Because, first of all, she hasn't thought it through. She just didn't think it through. And when she didn't think it through, there would have been more build-up to the story, the more body of the story, and the tailing off the story. Now, give her some slack. Even though this happened and it was traumatic, even if she wanted it, it still was traumatic, right, to actually see it.
Sure.
So some of the symptoms that you're seeing are real, but it's in performance. So this kind of like flailing around, and also the vocal fry. So when a person's voice raises and goes into that shrill, that is a form of anxiety and tension and stress, right? That could be part of it. The other part of it could be performance. So they do that naturally so that it seems like, oh, I'm so stressed. And Alec Murdaugh did that, remember? Alec Murdaugh did the same thing.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
He sure did. He's on our minds this morning, isn't he, Susan? Oh, my gosh. Yes. Well, and, speaking of Alec Murdaugh, I'm thinking of him in that police car, because remember, we were analyzing his words and what did he say at the time. We have some video of Ms. Margulies in the back of the police car. Police told her she wasn't in custody. She was still free to leave at this point, not under arrest. They were kind of sorting things out. She's there. Looks very emotional, though. She appears to be worried. Let's take a look together.
Your heart? Why don't you give me a deep breath, okay? It's okay. Hey, Julian. It's going to be okay, okay? You're okay. It's all good.
Do you want me to call you an ambulance? They can come check on you? No. No? It's not a problem to get him out here.
Yeah, it's not.
You're okay. I know you're going through a lot right now. It's going to be okay.
Oh, what a kind officer, the way he's treating her, huh? Susan, what's she doing in the car that you can see?
Well, she's moving about. What happens when somebody is in a traumatic situation? First of all, they're not in a flight mode, right? They're not in flight. They're not moving around. They're in despair. So everything should have collapsed. Not she's grabbing onto things within the car. This is a person that looks like she's trying to escape there, try to grab onto something so that she feels comforted. So it could be a car, it could be a window, it could be anything she's fidgeting with. And then you listen to her tonality and it switches up. You can see it become very calm. There's a point there where she's asked the question, and then she says, no, I'm fine. It's just like she goes in and out of that, the movements are not matching the tonality. See, this is where they get tripped up, Julie, every time. Either the body language and the voice are incongruent, the voice and the words are incongruent, or sometimes all three of them are incongruent at the same time. They're all telling stories. So this is a part of performance. What she's doing here is not what we would generally see in a truthful person. So I'm not going to say she's lying, but the grabbing on the outside as if she's trying to escape out or trying to find some side of solace by grabbing onto something, and then she kind of just scratches her nose. It is incongruent behavior. And again, look at her forehead. Look at her eyes. There's no rapid eye blinking. There's no distress in her forehead. There was no distress in her voice. And so again, then what it is that she's trying to appear as if she is grieving and upset. That's why we say this is performance, because when it's incongruent, it sticks, okay? It's not right. It doesn't. That's not the way it happens. It's not what we've seen in truthful people.
Definitely. You know, Susan, so to kind of put a bow on it, if you'll shift for us into jury consultant mode for just a moment. If she's called as a witness, she's going to have to explain this. You know, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to say, you know, you lied, explain to the jury why, you know. Do you think that she's lost all credibility, or do you think there could be hope for her before the jury?
There could be hope. There's always going to be a juror or two that might connect with her in some sort of weird way. I think men are going to have a really hard time with it. They're going to just call some, you know, BS on it. But when a jury is looking at, they're looking at what we call evidence demeanor. Right? Does it make sense? Does it fit? And if she goes into this theatrical, trying to throw on the crocodile tears with no tears, I think that you're going to have a juror, whether it's male or female or whoever it is, going to go, I'm not buying it. It doesn't seem real to me. She knew what she was doing. She was a part of it, and she's just trying to cover her tracks. So I think that you're going to, in any type of jury, as you know, they're not just going to walk in there and in an instant, she's guilty, or yes, share her story's good. You're always going to have fragments of it where people are going to question. And that's why it's really great to see the something focus groups, right? Because you can see people debating, right? They're seeing them debating and how they're processing and how they actually see the evidence, and then how they kind of drill things down and chisel it down to go, okay, now we all agree this is what we see.
You're so right.
That's the beauty, and this is so beautiful, isn't it, Julie?
It is, yeah. Trial advocacy.
Happens, yes.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, it's a fascinating area. I mean, we love it. Susan, we love you on this show. Thank you so much for all the insight you shared with us today. We'll see you soon. Coming up next year on Opening Statements, here's what we've got.
The evidence will show that Jesse and Sophia were still alive and breathing after their uncle repeatedly stabbed them. Still alive and breathing after their uncle set fire to their home and left them. Still alive and breathing as the smoke began to rise from the basement. And that, you will learn, is how those two children spent the final moments of their lives.
This case is incomprehensible. Look at these two young victims, these precious babies, allegedly murdered by their uncle, who allegedly murdered their mother and father, too. This is a live look in the courtroom where Paul Canero is being tried. There is His Honor, the Honorable Mark Lemieux, presiding over this case, just taking a seat on the bench. We're getting ready to go into day number 2 of the Mansion murders trial.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. Let's turn to our spotlight for you this morning. We're spotlighting the trial of a New Jersey man who's accused of murdering his brother's family, including 2 young, beautiful children. So this is the defendant. This is Paul Canero, and the allegation is that he got into some financial trouble. He was best friends and business partners with his brother Keith. And the allegation is that when things started getting bad and when Keith was on to his financial problems and stealing that was allegedly occurring, that he murdered Keith, police say, and Keith's wife, his sister-in-law, Jennifer. Look at this beautiful family. And police allege that he also murdered his niece, Sophia, and his nephew, Jesse, by stabbing those children multiple times. His niece stabbed 17 times. Let's take a listen to what the prosecutor said.
He stabbed his nephew, Jesse, multiple times in his upper body and threw his arm into his chest. And he stabbed his niece, Sophia, 17 times over her entire 45-pound body.
Who does that? What kind of monster does that? Sure sounds like overkill to us. How about you? So why? Let's bring in criminology expert, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Dr. Debbie, good morning. What do you think was going on here on these facts if we believe what police are saying Paul Canero did?
Thank you, Julie. Good morning. And what a sad, shocking, sickening case this is. I believe police, Julie. I think that Paul Canero was in a desperate spiral. I think money was the motivation. I believe these atrocious killings that took place was for a different reason. I think he wanted to manipulate the crime scene. He wanted it to appear as if it could not possibly be him, but rather maybe more than one killer, because we have the gunshots, sadly, tragically, of Keith and Jennifer, and the stab wounds of little Jesse and Sophia. So I think this is an absolutely deviant, devious, despicable individual who would do it, but I think he did it for the money, Julie.
Oh, I've got chills hearing you speak about this, Dr. Debbie. To reiterate, you're saying you think that he wanted it to appear as if it couldn't be him. So if it was so bad, so bloody, so gruesome, so heinous, then perhaps investigators would never look his direction. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, Julie, and we have seen it before, these classifications of crime. One of the worst, right? Familicide, where a family member annihilates another family member. But we know law enforcement investigation 101, family members are a primary group to whom they turn and look toward, because is there discord? Is there disharmony? Are there issues of, arguments? Allegedly, there were just several days before this tragedy. So I think the facts are lining up. Again, we'll use the word allegedly, but I believe Paul Canero, in his mind, this was this desperate unraveling of facts that his brother Keith was aware of. Paul Canero did not want that to be disclosed. I know you mentioned Alex Murdaugh earlier today. I'll mention him too, because I think there's alignment between the cases. Alex Murdaugh, the killing of Maggie and his son Paul, allegedly he was with financial issues to the tune of $9 to $11 million in debt. I think he killed his family members because he wanted to deflect attention away from that.
Yes, boy, I'm glad to see that you see the alignment as well, Dr. Debbie, with these individuals. And thank you again for prefacing your comments with allegedly. And we're doing this analysis based on the police allegations. We know that Paul Canero is cloaked in the presumption of innocence. His lawyer is saying that police got the wrong guy. Not him, didn't do it. He's being defended on innocence grounds. The state has a very different posture. As you know, I've got a clip for you, Dr. Debbie, where they talk about how he allegedly snuck up on his own family. Take a look.
He waited until dark, until the early morning hours after midnight, and he came prepared. He armed himself with a loaded handgun. He wore black nitrile gloves on his hands, and he snuck up on the family while they slept.
Dr. Debbie, what does that say to you? The plot, the lying in wait, the stealth nature of this in the middle of the night when they're all at their most vulnerable state, sound asleep.
Right, Julie, highest level of evil, but again, we go down the list of elements of first-degree murder. It's all there, the planning, the premeditation, the willful, the malice. So yes, I'll agree with your word. I think this was a plot. He devised this plan to where he thought he would get away with it, bring allegedly his brother Keith outside. The generator went down. He would logically want to look into what happened. That now leaves him potentially exposed for the horror that he faced. And now we have the innocent mother, Jennifer, and these two children on the screen. It's just so, difficult to see what's happened. But but that would make sense to me as a criminologist, this step-by-step plan planned the action, he carried it out, and again, these three elements of gunshot, stabbing, and fire, Julie, I think he planned that so it does not look like he would be capable of that, because remember, too, the allegation that his own home potentially was also ablaze.
Right, Dr. Debbie, yeah. I want to play a clip for you now from the defense opening statement. Let's take a look.
And those kids, Jesse and Sophia, he loved them like they were his own children. And the people that know them know he would never hurt them.
He loved them, she says. Again, she's an advocate, advocating for him, but that may be true. Dr. Debbie, how do you reconcile these concepts? You know, the concept that he loved them all their lives, and I believe there's evidence of that we're going to see from the defense when it comes time for them to present. But then the prosecution also has evidence, so they say, even forensic blood evidence that they say on items found at his home, his belongings that link to the children's DNA and can help prove these homicides, so they say. How can both things be true? Stabbing these kids multiple times, police say, but these are children he loved.
Yeah, it's just so difficult, Julie, in this world of criminal psychology and what's in the minds of these individuals. I always say in circumstances such as this, there could be that fine line between love and hate. And we've seen it in so many other cases, Julie. Would we say Lori Vallow, did she love Tylee and JJ? Well, then she killed them. Did Scott Peterson love Lacey and death of unborn Connor and the wife? You know, so many cases, Chris Watts, right? So this love in part, but not in full. You can't love somebody and kill them so brutally. And I do think that this individual, it appears that the facts are pointing to him. We keep him under the cloak as innocence, as you suggest, and I maintain as well. But at the moment, the facts are really pointing in his direction.
Yeah, definitely. Dr. Debbie, excellent analysis and insight from you. As per usual, we know you have to get off to class and go teach your students. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. When we come back, the testimony is set to resume in the trial Dr. Debbie and I were just talking about. Take a look at this live look at the courtroom. And I'm being told this is a detective on the stand. So we got the first witness of the day up. You're going to hear from her live next.
This is the Court TV podcast.
He began making plans that were executed about 8 hours later when he snuck out of the house in the middle of the night in his white Porsche Macan. And you know how those plans ended. Greed and desperation. Is that it wasn't so much about what the defendant stood to gain from Keith and his family's deaths as it was what he stood to lose. What he stood to lose had they lived.
We've got the Mansion murders trial underway in New Jersey for defendant Paul Canero. I want to show you a live look at the courtroom right now. We have a witness on the stand, a detective called by the state. And what we learned during the break is that this is a voir dire of her questions. She's a proposed expert that is going to be speaking to some of the financial crimes that are being alleged here to have occurred. And right now, the defense is getting a chance to ask her some questions. Let's listen in for just a moment together.
And you're doing that because looking at multiple documents gives you a fuller picture of a situation than looking at a single financial record.
Yes.
And you want to get that fuller picture because that fuller picture is what allows you to determine whether there is potentially criminal conduct or not.
Correct.
You are also looking for things in these records that could demonstrate motive.
At the end of an analysis, yes.
One of the things that you're trying to determine is if any of these records are supportive of or not supportive of motive.
Yes.
Because motive is going to, if it exists, right, is going to help in furtherance of an investigation.
Yes.
Motive.
Okay, so you see, as we're kicking off day number 2, a focus still being put on the money by these prosecutors. When you are a prosecutor, you are the master of your case. You get to choose what witnesses you're calling, in what order, and the way you want to see the jury receive the evidence. And yesterday, I made the comment on the show, I stand by my comment. I think it's a mistake to start with the financial information. If it were me, I'd be calling one of the detectives and start with the more stunning stuff, like these children, like we heard in opening statements, the state saying that after these kids were stabbed so many times, they were still alive when the house fire was burning. So they're inhaling all that smoke and bleeding out. To me, these facts are so incomprehensible and unspeakable. I would have started with witnesses who can speak to some of that and then get to the financial stuff later, but it's not my case. What I want to do right now is we just step out of this coverage while the voir dire is going on, assuming this is outside of the jury's presence. It usually is. I want to bring in our legal analyst guest. He's going to be with us for the next hour. He is a former prosecutor himself. He practices now in the private sector. Randolph Rice is with us. Good morning, Randolph. I want to know what you think about this, and you will not offend me if you disagree. You know, I want to hear how you would fashion this. Yesterday, I heard a lot of comments in our newsroom talking about, you know, starting the money, the business associate. The first witness was somebody who, you know, worked for the companies, and it just seemed like kind of a flat start to such a horrible set of facts for this man on trial. What do you think, please?
Julie, you're right. It's primacy and recency effect, and we've talked about this a million times when we discuss and we analyze and we break down these trials. It's the first thing you hear and the last thing you hear that are going to have that effect on the jury. And I agree that you need to come out of the gate with, I think, something that just captures that jury's attention. I would have gone with the brutal nature of the crime, the first officer to arrive, or maybe an ME that saw what happened, to really grab this jury's attention and remind them how brutal of a crime this really is.
Yes, yes, exactly, Randolph. I can't understand this philosophy here. I just think there's going to be a time in the trial where you do get to the financial stuff, because that's what they're saying is the motivation for these crimes. But right now, day 2, first witness of the morning, it seems like this is where they want to go again today. We'll see how it is received by the jury. Randolph Rice, I'm so glad you're with us to do more legal analysis. Stand by, kindly, please. Friends at home, thank you so much for being with us for opening statements this morning. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.